When it comes to framing out your container, one bit of advice I would give is before you put the boards on, go ahead and mark out every single joist position. That way you know exactly where your joists are. Ideally your joists are going to be spaced on equal centres. However, when I got to this end corner, the joist spacing was actually narrower. But fortunately, on the floor there was a nice mark there, so I could follow the mark up the wall and screw straight into the joist. On the walls of the container I've used 12mm plywood, and then on the roof I have used 5.5mm, which has also been used on the doors. Now the idea of using the thinner material on the doors and roof is to do with weight. The less weight you have on the roof, the less it's going to sag, and the same with your doors. The less weight you have, the less chance you've got of your doors dropping. In terms of where to start with your boarding, I would recommend starting and getting your ground boards in first, and then you want to go up to the roof and get your roof boards in. The roof was quite challenging. As it's 5.5mm, it has a tendency to bend. It's not very rigid, so I'd definitely recommend a second pair of hands to install the roof boards. So once your ground boards are in, I went to the roof and got the roof boards in, and just to finish off, put the second boards in. Now when putting the second boards in, I had to account for the vent on either side. Now that can be quite tricky to get that boxed in perfectly. I'm going to run through how I did it and how I would recommend doing it. On your second board, what you want to do is cut it so it finishes just below the vent, and then you're left with a nice manageable offcut. You can then offset it up to the vent and mark its vertical positioning. From there you can measure from the top of the board to the bottom of the vent and mark across, then the top of the board to the top of the vent and mark across. That leaves you with a square which you need to cut out. You can cut this out with a multi-tool, or simply what I did, drilled each corner and matched them up with a jigsaw. To finish the corners off and give it a little bit of a cleaner look, I've cut some plywood at 25mm wide. I've screwed that into place, and what that helps do is hide any gaps you may have where your boards join. You can get nice beading with a radius on, but it is quite expensive, so I've simply used the offcut supply I had, set the fence on the circular saw, ripped a load of 25mm strip. In terms of plywood thickness, it all depends on what you're actually going to be using the container for. On the left you've got the 12mm, on the right you've got your 5.5mm. You can go thicker or thinner on the board, and it's completely up to you and dependent on what you're going to be fixing into it. I would say 12mm is a happy medium. Material options, you've got OSB, MDF, drywall and even plasterboard. You will get your OSB obviously a little bit cheaper than your ply, and more expensive than your ply you've got your drywall and your plasterboard. To summarise and round up the key takeaways from the video, go around and mark the location of your studs. Decide on the thickness of your boarding and stick with it. Have someone help you install your roof boards, because that's what the plywood wants to do. Take your time boxing the vents in. Don't rush it, do it once and do it right. A string line is going to be your best friend on this job. Thanks for watching, and if you've got any questions, put them in the comments and I'm sure myself or someone else in the same boat will be more than happy to help.